Good morning, everyone. This is the Nantucket Historical Commission Friday, March 17th, 2023 meeting. Let me start by doing a roll call, see if I can spot everybody. So in the room, Georgia Grayson.
Present.
Abby DiMolina.
Present. Hi, guys.
Thank you. Paul. I see you on the screen. Can you hear us?
Me?
Yes.
Yes.
Mickey Rowland.
Here.
Hi, David Silver.
Here. Morning.
Good to have you. And in the room, we have Holly Backus.
Present.
Thank you. And guest Rita Carr, from MPT. Thank you for joining. And Mary on the screen, Mary Bergman.
Hello.
Welcome. So let's go ahead and begin. I didn't include the minutes. I'm still waiting for those. So I'll save that for the next time. So we can go ahead and begin with the discussion of the survey program and where we are with the survey, the current survey and so forth. We have exciting news that Holly will share if you haven't already gotten it in an email. And we can go from there.
So, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, we did receive in the mail, actually, this is your copy. They sent it to the office. So there you go. We have been obviously accepted for the next round. So the fiscal year 23 survey. Woo-hoo, yeah. Which we'll need desperately to do a big chunk of the Grant Point survey. So very, very exciting on that. We'll be working with obviously MHC to create the RFP and really narrow down on the list of properties. So please keep in mind on what properties you want to look for. On that note, Pal will be here next week. Sorry, I'm trying to grab my mouse. It's not coming over. Hold on. And with that, we narrowed down our list. So this is now I'm going to skirt into fiscal 22 grant, which is what we've received. We did the RFQ. We've got PAL accepted it, and PAL actually is starting their on-site work next week. So this is the list that we all went through. Now, yesterday I had a Zoom meeting with PAL and Erin and her teammate that will be coming next week to go over. We remember how we wanted to finish the fish lots, and then we have 42 residual properties out of the 140 to do. And this is what you all came up with. I specifically helped with from Mickey and Angus. We have pretty much the same thing, except for narrowing Easton Street down to just these three to give us the 42. These are all the Hulbert ones, focusing on the smaller ones as you all had requested on Walsh Street and Willard.
Quick question, Holly.
Yes.
So we're going to go back and get the ones that Easton just after, we're kind of like, we reprioritize, right? Okay,
Yes.
okay, so we'll go back and get them just
Yes.
after this.
And hopefully this is just going to be next year. I mean,
Yes.
that's the plan. So
Yeah.
it won't be a long wait, but as we've seen from so much change in the neighborhood, a year can make a difference. I don't know
Yeah.
how many houses we're getting worked on this year, but not a small number.
And when we last met, we had also some white elephant properties, as well as the Coast Guard as a Form A. And with speaking with Ginny, she reminded me of our CLG status, because I had mentioned how I know that the Coast Guard is looking at revitalizing their site on Brant Point, bringing coastal resiliency. There may be some, having to go to both the HDC and the state, which would also trigger your review. And she recommended that we take those off of this list for surveying because they're going to be required through our CLG request to MHC for them to update those surveys.
Oh,
Let's utilize that
yeah,
at that point. So we're gonna take, we've taken, because that also would have dug into about 10 surveys. And we want that, we want to be able to obviously survey those important spots. And so this is what I have recommended based on your recommendation. We're trying to further
Holly,
solidify how many. Yes,
Holly, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So the Coast Guard is required to do a survey of their, or have one done of their property, is that correct?
that can be part of our mitigation request when they have to go through section 106.
When
So
do they have to go through 106?
When they're working on very, very preliminary stages of looking at their site. Based on my Zoom meeting that I had with them back in December. It
So-
was literally just preliminary.
So they'll come up with a proposal to make some updates or changes or maintenance, and then that'll trigger 106.
It'll trigger 106, it'll trigger our review as well as MHC, and we can make that as a request. And this was guidance that Ginny actually provided to me, which I was very, very happy of. Again, this is another reason why I've been asking the state for CLG training, because again, it gives us that more
yeah.
oomph, if you will, within the review process.
Great.
So that was helpful. So that helps us to dive into the middle of Grant Point, which is to both Mickey, your point, and Angus's point. I hope you all are okay with that. So that leads us down to really tackling the East Lake, Lincoln, Henry, Hulbert, only those three on Easton, which are the ones near the point, which I think are good to get. And Walsh and Willard. So I told Ginny and Aaron that I was going to confirm with you all today. I said, well, it just so happens I'm meeting with them tomorrow, so let's cross our T's, dot our I's, so to speak, and hopefully you all are okay with this.
So have we seen that list? Because I'm not sure I've seen the latest version of it.
This is it as of my discussion late yesterday with Ginny. This is based on what Mickey, what you provided with the X's next to it.
Okay, are you looking at a list? Because I don't see one.
Oh, you don't.
Oh, hold on, sorry,
Sorry.
we were
Thanks-
sharing the
thanks, Mickey,
screen.
for that.
Mickey.
Sorry.
Technical
Technical
difficulties.
difficulties. The split screen is not really,
Oh, there it is.
it used to just.
Oh, I think it was because,
Sorry about that. I'm here. Well, what do you mean? Okay, so here is. I'm gonna go back to the top.
can you see it though?
There you go.
Okay,
Okay,
just making
alright.
sure.
Thank you. So here we go. I wish I could make this smaller, but it's on a Word instead of a PDF, so my apologies,
I
but
think you could zoom in,
can I zoom in?
view.
View? Yeah, thank you. Make it
200. Oh, you want to make it smaller?
small, just a little smaller. Yeah, so they can see. So again, this is, a lot of these have surveys, a lot of them we're gonna find properties that have multiple units on the lot. So they're gonna be able to say, oh, that's one survey, even though historically, it's pun intended, you're gonna have multiple old HDC surveys anyways. So they'll drag in, kind of like what we saw with the Form A that was done for the the Folger townhouses, where they had their individualized NAN number as a survey unit number with the state, but it was one form. So yeah, so basically what this is there's 14 on East Lincoln. Only 3 at the tip of the Brant Point for Easton at this time. The one on Henry, 13 on Hulbert, and again, these were all the ones that you had indicated with an X on, Mickey. Wall Street, getting all those, and Willard. Now, of course, we also have these on Hulbert that would be as Form Bs. I had, reason why they're yellow is I was asking whether or not they would be Form As because there's multiple units on the lot. But Ginny confirmed that it would be 2 Form Bs. So that would bring us to the total of 42. Again, I think it's really helpful, the fact that we've, are able to kind of take the Brant Point Coast Guard stuff off at this time, and not take it out of this much needed, and we only have 42 that we can do, roughly is what, Ginny was going by. And
Can I ask a question, Holly? Did you say
Sure.
Willard and Walsh are included in that?
yes,
Okay,
yes, and I hope I have interpreted this commission's want and need for wanting to go more internal versus on the exterior of Brant Point itself. But now with this new grant announcement, we can focus on the residual, taking out the ones that were on this last RFQ and saying, okay, we really wanted to get those this time, but we couldn't for this one, let's focus on those. Also, I have had a little brief conversation with our partners here at MPT. Thank you, Mary and Rita. There are ones on here that I know we've all noticed that are either gone completely, or, maybe they're altered beyond recognition over the years. But we already have an old macro survey on file, HDC survey, and we want to be able to do a continuation sheet with that, what that's called. And that was kind of my biggest concern in the beginning to Ginny on how do we handle these, but also at the same time, don't really want to take that away from a number count that we can have for a new survey. So she's willing to guide us in that process, but for the ones that we know have been flat out demolished, we want to put a continuation sheet on there with that history and showing, and it sounds like Mary and Rita is willing to assist in that process. So that's something that I will do. I'll be going through the RFP and the list that we had created originally and figuring out which ones we know. For instance, we know what the Sanford properties at 22, 24 Easton Street. We know that those from the ones that were built in the 50s have been demolished. But there's surveys for it. So we want to be able to capture that history, that go back to the original driftwood and provide those historic documentation, put it in there. And then they would be able to, when you go on Macros, you see where it says demolished or not demolished, they'll be able to indicate the why for demolished. And that's kind of that cleanup effort that I'm really looking forward to. So that way people are actually looking at accurate information in Macros. So that's that. I would really like it to be able to tell Ginny we're good to go with this list. I will email it to you all. I apologize I wasn't able to do it last night or this morning. But yeah, I will email that to you.
Holly, if there's a way to take this list and mark off on the list that Mickey and I gave you, that would be helpful to see what of those, where they are in that list.
Okay, yeah, they're all the same. So all the ones
You
that
took your list.
yeah, I took your list with the X's on them.
Yeah.
And pretty much you brought those over. There's only a couple that you had an X on, for instance, 32 Easton Street. I kind of stayed away from all of Easton Street except for the point. And obviously you guys had X's on some of the Brant Point stuff. Of course, we don't want to do that. There were some up on, actually, all the ones we did on Hulbert had that in the list. I was trying to clarify and clean it up for for PAL when they get here. And then all the ones on East Lincoln that you had put the X next to, Willard, Walsh. And then here's another aspect too, is we noticed we had in yellow some of these on Wall Street that might possibly have an association with the white elephant. And one cool thing I was talking to Pal on yesterday is we have some of these cottages within the internal part of Brant Point that had association somehow down the road with white elephant. They may be able to, through research at some point, be able to figure out, was that just a notation that HDC did on the survey? Or is there actually legit documentation to show that it was associated with it? One thing too, also, if you look at the GIS, which I can bring up for, if you look at the GIS for that area and bring up the macros dot, triangles that we always see. There's a lot for white elephant right now. There's that 1930s structure, obviously we know had some substantial changes in the 60s, and then there were individual surveys for cottages on that same lot that are no longer existent. Plus, we have across the street on a 62 and 64 Hulbert, where those little cottages are existing, and they're actually working on putting some arbors and fences and all that kind of stuff there right now, which hasn't been approved yet. I will notate that.
Sounds like you have.
But one of the cool things that, we're with our discussion was, okay, well, we know these little cottages have about 6 existing surveys right now, and then the other lot only has about 2. How would we, and they're part of the White Elephant complex. How can we handle the hotel as well as those, as well as doing a justification of the history of the ones that are no longer there? And that would be a Form A. So that would actually be really cool too.
So they would get absorbed rather than having their own. Form
Exactly,
A.
Mhm.
exactly, yes. And I would, since they're not on this list, and that would be something that I think this next round, we should have them on there. So again, that's why I wanted to emphasize, we'll want to bring some of those on to this next round. Yes, sir.
Did you say that the original white elephant, what was there before that? There is no longer anything to,
The original one, based on the HGC survey, was in the 30s.
yeah,
And then some of the cottages on that same exact lot at 50 Easton, that have surveys from the 80s for some reason, are no longer there. But the last large, at least I know, in the 60s, when my great grandfather worked on it, 65 is the year that the survey actually indicates it having a large alteration too. But I think there's history down there that, would be nice to capture. Probably through NHA records and such.
yeah, so Jenny's not gonna be able to look up anything that was there prior to the original white elephant is kind of what I'm asking.
If there is information that a lot of that research, they really look to us to provide. I say us, myself, and my colleagues over on the other side and PT.
Right,
Anything that they could provide to help us, and I will say that they have done already.
okay, all right.
Some substantial information. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's records, the NHA has their Sherburne Associates
Yeah.
business paper, so I actually have, I'm looking at photos, they have, one real estate appraisal of all their properties one from the 60s and one from the 80s, so
Perfect.
I've actually gone down and photographed that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yay. So basically, I just wanted to mention that we originally had those on the list as a Form A. And talking to Jenny, she said, well, we can also incorporate the cottages because they're also associated with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Even so, they don't have to actually be connected to each other. They can, as long as they're
associated, yes, yes. And that's one of the benefits, I think, having an area form.
Right.
From talking to her and getting more of an understanding too, is there are we as commission, as we're going through the survey process, we're gonna find areas that we may want to stick with having a Form B for the individual property, but also have an area form to also cover it too. They can be as detailed as we want them to be. Like, for instance, I bring up the Underhill cottages in Wisconsin. That makes sense, though. Some of them have their own surveys from the 89, but having one from the area form that actually gives the overall arching history of Underhill cottages and how they all, are part of that group together. So pretty cool. Good. So that's that. I want to make sure you guys are okay with this list because I'm going to be sending it to them. And I've also also on that note, Angus and I have received a couple of emails from some folks who have received the letter. So last time Pal came in prep of them coming, there was a letter that was sent out to property owners. And it was posted on the town's website through the newspaper, the town manager's newspaper or newsletter. This past time, there's two different ones, one for the fish lots and one for Brant Point. And those letters have gone out, and now that these folks have received them, they've reached out and said, hey, very exciting. Just that's another way of folks being able to know what we're doing, as well as if they have information to provide, which is great. So I had another email the other day.
I have a question. Is that something we could post on our site as well? Like,
The letter?
yeah,
Oh, it was already done through Florence, yeah.
okay,
She's been, oh, speaking. And this kind of still segues into what we're talking about with the survey plan. I wanted to bring it to the commission's attention that the, bear with me, that our all right, bear with me for a second. Okay, here we go. That all our surveys from this last survey work are now on the town's website
oh, great.
through the preservation planning page. Florencia has put up some verbiage that I put together for her to put up. We also have the latest and greatest final survey plan. We haven't received that hard copy yet from PAL, but my understanding is now that MHC blessed it with the revisions that we all saw, we'll be receiving the hard copy here shortly. All right, so I'm gonna go up and show you guys this. I think it's important. Bear with me, guys. Full screen. So,
Meanwhile, Holly, is the electric copy available yet?
yes,
Okay.
so through our NHC page, go to the preservation planning page. I'm just gonna bring you guys over here for a second. Scroll down, and then here we go. Here is the fiscal year 21 grant project that's been completed of the pilot survey of the fish lots. A little bit information about the fish lots. And then if you all, I don't know if you all saw this map that they created. If it opens. Basically, this shows all the lots that they surveyed. Come on. All right, there it is. So it's really tiny, but how you get the information is zooming into it. This gives you a really good visual of all the properties that they surveyed. There you go. You go back to that page. Here are all the surveys from fiscal year 21 as one ginormous PDF. That's the only way, unfortunately. So all of them are together, all 97 surveys. I'm gonna go back here. And then here is the historic property survey plan. And there will be some verbiage on that. I'm working on that. There'll be a write-up for MPT. So I'm working on that right now, but it will also be on the town's website. So this is the survey plan, and yeah, this is awesome. I'm so excited to see this. Yay. Everything's here.
So Holly, how you got to this was to go to the historical commission, and then from the historical commission to preservation planning
Yes.
is,
Scroll, do you wanna scroll back up a second?
Oh, yeah.
is
'Cause
it?
it shows right there.
Well, if you go back. And they're all connected, pretty much. I wanted to make it short, so you could connect it from the HTC page, you could connect it from the historical commission, you could, CLG. So right over here under quick links,
Preservation. plan.
preservation planning. And this is where I'm thinking, with the revolving fund
Mhm.
project, whenever that gets underway, there could be links here.
Mhm.
That was really the sense aspect of creating this page to get like the basic history on here. I'm also working on having this to be the page where people know, from an HTC perspective, when they need to provide historic documentation, where they can go, what do we need, all that kind of stuff.
That's terrific, Colleen.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
great.
really exciting. It sounds great.
Great.
So, I mean, as it stands right now, I know the historic property survey plan is not emphasized with a nice paragraph, but that will be up there soon. So it's give just a description of the.
Can you
Fish Lot
scroll to the
neighborhood.
bottom?
Oh, yeah.
Keep going. I want to look at these.
This is great.
Oh, this is part of the main page.
Okay, because I didn't know how to pick what goes down there.
It's
that
just
would be
terrific.
nice.
Wow.
So yeah, I wanted you guys to see that. That went up this week. Very exciting.
Bravo.
Yeah, good job, Holly. That's great.
Terrific. Wow.
And so that really, I think, includes all that update aspect. Again, just want to make sure that everybody is okay with that list. And like I said, I will email it to the commission so you guys have it. I'm in the process of providing any of the PIN NPT information that was from the interiors project. That's on the town's website, providing all that information, uploading it to their shared drive, as well as any of the older files that you gave me. I'm speaking to NPT from any of the house histories. Make sure they have it all. Because I've given them so much from the beginning, from the first phase of the fish lots to now. So, yep,
Thank you for that, Holly.
This is terrific, Colleen.
thank you.
Love having the stuff available online.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just so nice because we can just like shoot out a link and be like,
Right.
here's where you
Yeah,
find
I
everything.
bookmark
And
mine.
on that note, I wanted to be able to have them individually, but at least the list is out there. I did also send Florencia the final report for the fish lot survey, and that actually has the individual properties listed with their macros number. That I also want to have on the website, so it's clear, but there'll also be a notation that once MHC is satisfied, which my understanding they are, it's a process to get them on their macros database. But once they are, it'll be easier for people to be able to see these, and all those triangles pop up on the fish lots section of our map on the GIS. They just haven't got that part yet. So at least in the interim, we have this list and people can go check it out.
So exciting.
Yay.
I just think about all the, like, having to go to all the different resources to
Yes,
MBT would, hope that they'll have something, or the library or the town building. It's nice to actually have this consolidated.
And that
Thank you.
one.
Are there anyone up on the screen? Do you have any comments or anything about the list that we'll be passing on?
That will be distributed shortly.
yes.
Great.
Great work, Colleen.
Thank you.
As Georgia pointed out, I skipped right over public comment. I don't know how much public there was when we started the meeting, but is there anyone from the public that has any comment?
Didn't see whether anyone was here.
I think Mary and Linda are public. Do you guys have any comments?
So next on the list is the HTC advisory boards and the HTC review, debrief and next steps. There's a bit to unpack there. The select board was going to discuss some of this, and they had a 440-page packet and a full agenda, and voted to postpone the discussion because they didn't think that they would be able to give it the attention that they felt it needed. But meanwhile, Holly, do you want to update us on what has happened with advisory boards, I know Mickey and Historic Structures have come up with a document that I think the HTC was wanting to see and was submitted, but then I think that was sort of digested and put back out in another document. So maybe just give us an update of where we are.
Briefly, because I think a lot of this, as I think I mentioned to the entire commission, that this is a little premature. It has not publicly gone to the select board for that discussion. I think it's important, but to clarify the record, as I mentioned to the OFC chair of the HDC, that it's really hard to legally have a short-term solution on the advisory boards versus a long-term. I'm a planner. I've been in, local law, local planning of the government, at a local level, both county and town, for almost 18 years now. Oh my God. And you have to have the legal boundaries of it. So as everybody knew from the onset, chapter 124 was something that needed to be looked at. And so that's what the draft included, what HSAG had provided. And thank you for doing that. But it includes that in there. It was provided to the HDC at their last meeting of the OFC, which was March 7th or 9th. Briefly for them to have. It's been disseminated. They are going to have another OFC meeting because of course they don't deliberate on this kind of stuff at an HDC meeting with all the applications. And again, I think it's also important to note that the advisory board conversation and specifically this was not to be really the crutch of the select board meeting that was supposed to happen on Wednesday, but the discussion of the draft scope of services and I'm hopeful that the select board will see that the HDC has taken an initiative and an ownership, if you will, of that draft, which also now has been incorporated into a proposal from the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, which I'm hopeful that the town will really embrace because they are the leaders, quite frankly, of assisting any historic district. So.
Can I ask just this question of Holly? So it sounds like this 124 draft is being reviewed by the HTC or the OFC, which stands for the Operational Focus Committee. Is that right?
Organizational focus.
Organizational focus. So they have their subgroup is reviewing this chapter 124 document.
Yes.
When do you expect that to come up again at an OFC meeting?
Can't hear you, Holly.
Oh, I don't know. That's a question for the chair of the OFC, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could you just put in a word for, at least for me as the chair of the HSAG or B, whatever you're kind of calling now, that I would love to attend that meeting?
Yes.
That would be terrific, because I kind of somehow missed the last one. I tried to get into a next one. I'm not even sure if you had it. I'd love to weigh in on that, because I think the current draft of the section 124 looks great. There's a lot of points in the document, but there's a few. So before I get into that, I've just been sort of thinking about whether or not this is an appropriate discussion for the NHC.
Right. Agreed.
And I know, Holly, you probably think that it's probably more in the line of the HTC, which of course is their domain. But the NHC is concerned about the historic character of downtown, and the advisory boards have a big effect on that through the HTC. So I think that the function of the advisory boards and the procedures involving them are important discussion points for this group. And I think that we should be weighing in on how we feel those are being handled in procedurally. So there's a few points in the 124 document that concerned me, and maybe we don't need to have a discussion yet. Maybe it is a little preliminary if the OFC hasn't even officially gone there yet. Have they reviewed this document themselves?
They've received it. They have not had a discussion about it, and that's what that next meeting will be, whenever that is. I don't know.
Okay.
Again, it's hard for me to tell when, because the OFC is also working on the solar work group as well.
Yeah.
And I don't
Right.
know who means what, and they meet as the chair sees fit. But that was flat out indicated. And I will mention that Thursday meeting, unfortunately, the town had multiple meetings going on, so we had to use another Zoom account, and it was, so I apologize on behalf of staff that was difficult to get in. We had to rush at the last minute, of course.
One of the problems is that we only meet once a month. And we don't want to be in a position where this has all been dealt with by the time of our next meeting.
I think that's the concern is that if we want to weigh in on something or participate in a conversation, often this will sort of, happen before our next meeting. So it's a little challenging. So as much heads up, the better, so that we can participate or at least give our opinion. We don't need to be in an active conversation, but I do think that we have opinions about this as written, and Mickey, you could go into any of the points, but I feel like we want to be able to at least offer something to the OFC and the HDC about our opinions of the documents being presented. Because it does, it also.
I also have concerns about that document, and I was going to speak, but you guys have already said basically what I was going to say anyway. So my only other question is, how soon will this come to fruition once everybody's seen it?
What do you mean?
I don't think we know. Right?
Well,
It's not going to happen in the next month or so.
no. Mm-mm.
No, because it sounds like they have to have a meeting. That, and the thing that they were going to the select board wasn't even this, it's
Correct.
just the scope. So then I
Correct.
think eventually this draft of this would have to also go to select board, and I would imagine there's gotta
The
be
town
some.
council too has to weigh in.
Yeah,
It's
there's gotta
very,
be
very
some
clear
lead
that
time.
I
town
think that's
council has,
everybody's concern. Okay.
yeah, town council needs, they're the biggest crutch of it, because no offense. I think we have one lawyer in the room, right, Georgia? But, town council needs to weigh in on it, and they've seen they saw a rough draft that I provided, and again, I incorporated what HSAG had provided, thank you, Mickey, into that document that was sent. So again, it was trying to get a draft going, that was mentioned way back in August when the advisory boards were disbanded. But that was something, and again, as you all know, many things going on, and some things that just, it's not that this isn't a low priority, there's too many, multiple priorities at the same time for many
I would
town
like to say
boards.
that I agree, obviously, the town council has to weigh in, but we know from history of the last 6 or 8 months, that town council's position is that the select board is the only entity that we can reconstitute these committees, and it is other people's opinions that town council is not wholly correct in that regard, that there are statutory authorizations for independent committees separate from select board appointments. And I think the letter that Hillary Rayport wrote to the Inky this week adequately states that position, that there's a similar independent commission up in Cambridge that is independent of the way the town council thinks that section 124 should be used, chapter 124 should be used. So I don't think town council's opinion is the last word, is what I'm saying.
So
And therefore, I think that it's possible for us to have an opinion separate from the fact that town council has weighed in on this. Town council is not necessarily the last word.
My understanding is that opinion that went out was reviewed by town council and it hasn't changed their opinion.
That's fine,
Yeah.
but they had that opinion last August, and there was a great deal of dispute about it then, and I think. there's
I
going to
just
be dispute.
wonder, should we kind of pick our battles? Like, are you really gonna get anywhere, even if you don't agree with what, like, I just wonder if, like, realistically, is that a good use of our time? To spend time fighting what we don't, because I guess when I think about this, I think we should more be trying, as Mickey, I think, has done a great job of being involved in the solution, being part of the answer, because I feel like if people just think we're opposing it to oppose it, then you're not gonna get a seat in the room because they're gonna figure out the way they want to reconstitute it. And so I just feel like it might be more effective to try and like be a part of the solution, so at least you have a voice. I guess that's just the way I feel, because if you're saying like, well, that's not legally, I don't agree with that, then you're probably not gonna be involved in whatever they decide to do. And so I really feel like if you really wanna be a part of it, I just don't know if that's the best way to use your resources. I just feel like it might be more effective to try and be, hey, like, we all want the same thing. We want the boards reconstituted. We might not all agree on how it's done, but ultimately, I feel like it would be more effective to be like, but let's be part of the solution, because I just feel like the more we are debating back and forth and like having separate legal opinions, like, realistically, that's not gonna go
Well, I
anywhere.
agree with that, except that if you say that the boards can be appointed by the advisory boards can be appointed by the select board, you're basically making it a political appointment, as opposed to the HTC being able to appoint them, which means they're likely to be more professional and committed local residents.
Well, again, I on
So
that point,
it's not a moot issue. It's not an irrelevant
No,
issue.
but I'm
Who
saying,
appoints them?
but make it part of your solution. Don't like make it the
Well, how do you do
legal.
that, though? If you say it's the
Be
select
part,
board, the
be a
select board
part of
has
how
to-
they're rewriting it, be a part of how they're writing the
Mm.
qualifications, like, I just don't think if you're gonna argue on that, I just think what you're gonna end up doing is you're not gonna have a
Well, maybe-
seat at the
maybe-
table at
maybe
the solution, and I just think that, like, if you truly wanna be a part of it, and that's just the way I see it when I, in my job,
Yeah.
I have to work with a lot of people who don't agree on things,
Mhm.
but the more if someone just keeps fighting and fighting something, then, and you're like, we gotta get this done,
Yeah.
you exclude that person out of the conversation, because all they're gonna do is keep redirecting you away
Yeah.
from getting a solution. So I just, that would just be my point, and I know it's not necessarily easy to accept, but I think that it's probably, again, if you really want the same thing, which is to have them reconstituted and have, yeah, properly.
So how do you think we should do that then?
Then I
don't
think-
disagree.
No,
we're
I think,
wise
I
about
think,
that.
I think like Mickey's saying, be a part of the conversation when they're rewriting, provide thoughtful commentary that isn't inflammatory, like when they're rewriting the statute, like they have a whole section in there, I read it, about like qualifications. They could beef that up, like you're saying, we want people who are qualified professionals. Nobody's like, that's ridiculous. Like, I think that 100% makes sense. I think you're right, it shouldn't be political, but I feel like there are ways you can do that that aren't, it doesn't have to be very-
Combative?
Yeah, combative. And I
Because
think
that's
the
what
more
it's
it's
been.
combative, that what it does is it just makes it less likely that people who are combative are gonna be included in the solution, because the thought is they're
Yeah, I
combative.
get your point. I get
And
your
so,
point.
so I think like trying to be part of the solution in a collaborative way, like provide, like I think, provide thoughtful input on how, like, because Mickey provided input and they incorporate it, like, I don't think they won't, but I think it has to be done in a way that isn't
Well-
my way or the highway, or more,
Right.
I don't know, and Holly, I mean, that's just,
Quite frankly, the OFC.
Yeah.
Charged the advisory boards, which, the chair of the OFC was really looking at HSAG and SAC. Which unfortunately, SAC is already the one has more of the legalities behind it to begin with. It has already the rules, parameters, guidelines, what have you. The other advisory boards do not, and again, that's where we're at. it was looking at a short-term and long-term solution, and quite frankly, as staff, I don't see a short-term solution that's legal.
Yeah,
I'm not the attorney, but I don't see that from a planning perspective or legally perspective. I'm looking at the long-term solution, which what was charged to me as staff from the planning director back in August, if everybody saw, I know that email has been FOIA'd and the whole 9 yards has gone out to everybody. They see where it said Holly is working on a solution to chapter 124 when it was written to the chair of the HDC. That's what I was working, and that's what I was incorporating on with the information that Mickey provided from HSAC. So again, that is part of a solution. It needs to be reviewed by town council. It needs to be reviewed by the OFC /HDC. It needs to have buy-in from town administration, and it needs to go through the proper channels in order to legally constitute these things. But having public opinion and all these assumptions that have recently come across is just, it's unproductive and unnecessary. So I hear what Mickey is saying, Angus, what you're saying, and again, we just need to go through the proper channels, let those two commissions have their discussion, or the OFC and the HDC, let them provide it, let it, again, this household has to be a topic with the select board. They need to have buy-in. And I know government is slow, but it's slow. So,
Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
the government is slow, and I don't think anyone on the screen or at the table wants to fight. And I think that in general, all of these steps are to move forward with the outcome that I believe we're all looking for. We're looking for the advisories to be reinstated. The HDC is looking for them to be reinstated. MPT and Wisconsin Trust, Holly and the town have committed to making that work. So I think that these are all people at the table wanting the same outcome. And I think when this is written and is finalized for a long-term process, it needs to be the best iteration that we can come up with. And what Mickey presented from our HSAG group, hopefully is helpful. But there are a bunch of specifics that sort of make that document as good as it can be. Hillary, thank you for joining the meeting. I see your hand up. Would you like to join the discussion?
Hi, thank you, everyone. I just wanted to make a couple comments. I certainly agree with being productive. I just also want to remind everyone of the obvious, which is that this isn't, a corporation that we all work for. This is town government. And this is a proposed bylaw amendment. So it would need to be approved by town meeting. And generally, for things that go to town meeting, you want stakeholders' input. So I mean, you'll make your own decision, but I think having a robust discussion about what advice you would give the select board as a primary, if not the primary stakeholder in the historic district and advising on it, I think it would be very helpful for, I would hope, the staff, certainly the HDC and the select board, to hear this commission's advice. And I've already shared my advice, but it's really what matters is your advice. And regarding the legality, I mean, I think it's how the objectives, civic objectives of the bylaw are primary. And then the question is how to make those civic objectives something that can be implemented within the legal framework of the Commonwealth. So at this point, I think there's still a lot of work to be done on the civic objectives. And Holly, I was able to listen to the OFC meeting, at least the beginning where this was shared, and that, was a little delayed, as you mentioned, for, technical reasons. But I guess this came from some source. Is there anything, with the permission of the chair, that would be helpful to hear about the source and what you learned through the preservation community about advisory boards?
Yeah, there's no other one, none in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. None. Nantucket was the only one and it wasn't legally done. So the only other one that I could find was Prince Edward Island in Maryland. They're the only ones that had some sort of advisory concept with legal guidelines and parameters. So that was my source, if that is
I see.
helpful to you.
And how do they do it there? I mean, how do they do it there?
I pretty much drafted 124 for the advisory boards off of that document.
I see. So they also have the select board or whatever their governance
Their
appointing
council, their county council, I believe, is what their
appoints
legal
it.
structure is. So again, I'm a big firm believer in not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
So, I did my due diligence for the town and reaching out to the state, asking our contacts up at MHC, finding out, is there anything? No, and I did that way back in the beginning. Also, getting some information. So again, the only aspect that I could find that was anything that was close to it was Maryland. But I want to go back to this. I mean, thank you, Hillary. I see that you've put comments within the PDF of the document for today's discussion, but I still am a firm believer that yes, this commission has a seat at the table when it comes to the historic district, but it's a little premature. A, B, that the town is wanting to have an independent review. And I'm praying that the National Alliance Preservation Commissions is the one that is going to be facilitating that. And I think at that time, that's when, that holistic review can be done and looking at everything. And that should include the advisory boards. Because yes, you are absolutely correct, Mr. Chair, through you to Hillary, that this article would require town meeting. But again, I'm looking at it as a long-term solution, just like any other person in, town government would. So.
And I
What was that? The national one?
I was just going to say, Mickey, I mean,
National Alliance Preservation.
what the opinion that we would probably produce in this meeting is probably what you're gonna be conveying in the OFC meeting, if you're able to participate in that.
Yeah, hopefully I will be able to participate in that. And I just have I think this chapter 124 document is pretty well put together. It's pretty thorough. And I just have a few, specific issues with it. I don't think they're major, but they will require some discussion. The first one is regarding the I don't know if you want to follow this on the document or not, but anyway, it's the section that talks about the membership. And it's saying a majority of the members must live in the area. And I know that sounds like it makes sense for Sconset and Nantucket, but downtown, there's there's only one of us currently that lives downtown in our HSAG group. And to say that the majority of this committee has to live downtown, I think is going to be really restrictive. So I think that has to be looked at more carefully.
Mickey, I think.
I agree.
If it's okay with you, I really do think, and Chair, these type of specific comments, I would love to have it in writing if you wouldn't mind doing that. And I would be happy to, provide,
add them to the
yeah,
PDF?
look at them and see how, and I would like to have that, and this would help with the time frame. I know everybody wants to get this, is concerned on time. So, if you wouldn't mind providing them to me prior to us having the OFC meeting again, whenever that is, then we can be a little bit more proactive in that end, instead of having, and I could mention to OFC that these are comments that came from the chair of HSAG, and, you know, this is something that they had concerned on. I'm
Yeah, no,
more than happy of doing that. Again, I wanted to take the document that you all did and put it within the format of the legal document.
So that's
Yeah.
that's definitely something I'll do, Holly. I'll make sure, I got 3
you.
points and I'll definitely get them to you. And I'll email them to you today.
Perfect,
But
thank you.
But knowing that this group probably won't be meeting till for a while, I thought I'd just share those
Sure.
concerns with this group.
Mhm.
So that was the first one. The second one, I think is gonna, well, I guess we'll find out. Currently, the document says that when revisions to an application at the HDC are submitted, those revisions will only go to the advisory boards if a motion is made to send them to the advisory boards. So that, I think, is an important issue to just review, because I think that personally, I feel that every application should go to the advisory boards, regardless of whether it's revisions or a new application. Because when when the board is making a decision whether or not to send it to us, to the advisory boards, it's a little subjective. And I think that that leaves it open to like questioning, why did this one go to the advisory board versus some that didn't go to the advisory boards? And I think that just to be fair and even, without having to throw any judgment into it, I think every application that's submitted within our area should go to the advisory boards. And that's what we've been doing privately through HSAG. We've been reviewing every single one, and I honestly think that the HDC appreciates that. I don't think they have any problem with us reviewing every application, whether it's new or revision. So that's one of my biggest concerns actually is that choice, that some go to us or some don't. And then
I think that's a good point, Mickey, that if they have a process, that it should be very documented and clear.
Yeah,
It's like
consistent,
how,
yeah.
yeah, it should be totally consistent. So if they are saying in this example, they don't go back automatically, it needs to, like, these 3 things trigger going back or not going back. But I do think that's fair, that the more clear you are of why or why not, so at least people will know what the process is and what to expect. Oh, did I check these 3 boxes? Okay, it's got to go back. Oh, if not, whatever. So I think that's a good point, Mickey. Sorry,
Yeah.
just to
Reduces
jump
the
in.
likelihood
No.
of litigation
Right, exactly. The more consistent and
and
clear
obvious.
you are, yeah.
Thank you, Abby. And I think that's all very accurate. And I think that, to be honest, before when that was kind of a policy when we were working as HSAB, I think they forgot to just make the motion a few times. So it just erroneously didn't come to us. So to have to make a special effort for us to come to our committee is just a little bit too onerous and problematic. And then the third comment I have is regarding the agendas. And I don't care who writes the agendas, but I think that the chair of the various committees ought to have a review of the agenda to make sure it's thorough, rather than because I think just about any town board that happens, the chair is always reviewing agendas before it gets published. And that's all I'm asking, is that because sometimes, especially with the historic structures, they're not necessarily outlined in green on the HDC agenda, and they might get omitted on our HSAB agenda because they're just not as obvious. So I think it'd be really helpful if we could review that prior to its publication, and that's it.
Well, could they do something? Because I hear what you're saying, Holly, that it's time consuming, but maybe could they almost do a thing where they post the agenda like but so not everyone sees it, but that at least like
Well,
those people.
Quite
could see it?
frankly, the hundreds of applications for the HDC and that agenda is priority number 1.
Right.
Creating separate agendas, creating separate view packs, that's in addition time consuming. I mean, I can't tell you, thank God for
Holly?
Esmeralda and,
Holly?
yes.
I've been doing that for our group the last 8 months. I mean, is there any reason why I can't put together an agenda and do do all that work. I know it's a lot of work, but, and I'm saying I can take that off of your hands and make it a lot easier for you.
I don't know what the legalities on that are, but that would be a question, definitely. It would be something. that
Angus puts
town-
together this agenda. I mean, this is another group. I mean, it's many committees put together their own agendas.
Correct. But you're also dealing with committees that handle their own influx of applications. You all are not receiving those applications. And again, it's a subcommittee aspect of things. You all are, it's,
But that's a good point, though, that Mickey says, though, like maybe if, let's
Yeah.
say Mickey and whomever, if they post the HDC agenda, he has a certain amount of time, then he could create his agenda based on what they know they're going to be theoretically reviewing, right? Like Mickey, is that kind of what you're thinking?
It's what I'm doing right now.
Right, so then, but I guess to their point, it would be like subject to the HDC agenda, but that way, if he does it instead of you doing.
well, I mean, it's not just that, there's open meeting law requirements, applicant, agendas have to be posted within 48 hours of the application, of the agenda. But when you're dealing with, you're gonna have to post an advisory board agenda prior to the HDC's agenda.
Mm.
Put it this way, okay? Today's Friday. Esmeralda has posted Tuesday's meeting for HDC already,
Mhm.
posted, done. She can, open meeting law, and you can remove things from an agenda that's not going to be discussed, but you cannot add to, okay? So all those things for right now, and I assume, Mickey, this is what you do, you probably go through the posted agenda and look to see what is in the HSAB's jurisdiction area and go from there.
Exactly.
Technically, for your Monday meetings, because I know historically you all have been meeting on Mondays, and I think that's when you've brought that in for HSAG. That meeting needed to be posted before,
Her meetings.
yes. That's
So
what I'm
then
getting at.
they'd
So
have to
there's
be,
gonna
like,
be some
in arrears.
functionalities that are gonna have to change. Again, if these are legally constituted for the advisory boards, for that to work, and I just wanted to bring that up.
I'm aware of that. So that's a problem anyway.
You mean the problem of, I see one of the problems of this whole thing is the timing. Is that it's so, everything is so last minute that we're getting our list from Esmeralda.
Yeah.
Virtually the hours before we need to meet and discuss the things that will be discussed the day after we discuss them. So it's all sort of jammed up. If we had 4 days, then that would give us a day to come up with our agenda, where it would still be within the advanced time to be able to post a meeting. And then, but it's also last minute. So what is your suggestion, Nikki?
Well, that is a problem. I mean, it basically 48 hours before Monday is probably Thursday. So that means we would have to post our agendas on Thursday. So, and that's before Esmeralda even puts together the HDCs. So it's definitely.
So we couldn't post a meeting because we don't know what we're meeting on until the posting comes out for the HDC.
Right,
Tell you, it's not as easy as that.
So
but maybe that's why we need.
I mean, so systematically, that's an issue. And like, we
Yeah.
would need to have a little bit more heads up of, Tuesday or Wednesday posting of what the meeting was gonna be in order for us to.
Now
post
you,
our-
now you understand why when HDC has 2 meetings in a week for Tuesday and Thursday, why the same agenda is posted, you have to. And then right after the HDC's meeting on Tuesday, then she has to amend that agenda to reflect it on what was discussed at the HDC.
So she
meeting on
like, because she can delete the stuff. off,
Correct.
But she can't.
But they don't meet every week because OFC also meets, so.
So let me interrupt here. We're kind of getting into the weeds on this discussion, and maybe this is something that the OFC and the advisory board chairs need to talk more about.
Yeah,
I'm not sure we're going to solve this problem here
but
today.
it's a good point. I do think it's a good point, Mickey, obviously.
Thank you.
The detailed process, yes, needs to be.
Yeah. So, all right, so those were my only comments about that particular advisory board subject, so. Thank
So
you.
Holly, you can ensure if you're at the meeting, see if they can come up with a magical solution for that one. It'll be complicated.
No, I will be there, but it will be, yeah, it'll be.
Yeah.
I mean, all these applications are put in, I mean, they have to be in whatever it is, 10 days or a week in advance, and then they're probably not even reviewed for, a week or two, or, however long in the list after that. So it seems like we could be coming up with a list, but that's a that's a thing for the HDC and administration to figure out.
Yeah.
On the last point about the document that we're talking about is the appointment of the advisory board members. Did you mention that? Sorry, I apologize if you already brought that up, but as far as select board versus the HDC coming up with those member names.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sorry, Nikki.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't bring that up. That's a discussion that is it's a big discussion, and I didn't, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. I mean, I think the HTC should appoint them, but that's getting, a lot of other discussion points involved in it. So I didn't really touch on it.
I think one issue at least we should raise, and or should say somewhere, is that we ought to recommend to the select board that they let the HDC make the appointments, make their recommendations about who should be on these subcommittees.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Why
maybe,
would anybody know better than the HDC?
I don't
You
think
know what?
anyone would.
but maybe that is the answer. Maybe the answer is the HDC proposes the candidates and then the select board appoints them, but it's really just a rubber stamping of coming
Right.
from
That
the
would be fine.
HDC.
Right.
That would be
So
fine.
maybe that's the way to do it. And the HDC says, okay, we're gonna propose these candidates, and it becomes like just a part of the process rather than the select board picking random people. No, it should come from, it comes from a slate
Yeah.
that the HDC proposes.
That's
That
the
might be a good way to do it.
That's, I think that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
what does the select board know about appointing?
And I'm
No,
sure-
and then
I'm sure
they're
they'd
just
be happy to have those
formalizing.
recommendations.
Right,
too.
they don't wanna
go
do
into
any,
this
they don't wanna
stuff,
have to
right.
do additional work.
Right. they don't
But
wanna-
I think the concern, if, correct me if I'm wrong, the concern was the legality. So that meets the legality of it, of HDC provides us, a
Recommendation.
recommendation for the candidates. And then select board formally appoints them, fine, but I think if you make that the process, everyone would be.
That's what
accepting
I
of
think
that.
makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah,
Yes, because at the end of the day, we do not want to open up the special act.
right,
And that was what, that's
But
why this is the mechanism to do it.
yeah, so I think though that might be something, Holly, if you want, we can. But like put that in there that HTC provides recommendations. And then the select board formally appoints the candidates based upon recommendations from
Yeah.
the HTC.
Fine.
And everybody would
That
be,
sentence in the first section can be reworked.
okay.
That's all that it really is.
All right, Hillary, your hand is that up from
Hi,
before?
Thanks.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's would be a good second choice. But I would use the word nominate, because if you say makes recommendations, it's just a recommendation. And if your intention is what I think it is from listening to the discussion, that the HDC would propose the members, then they would nominate the members or propose the members, and the select board would choose from folks that have been proposed. And for what it's worth, there's lots of, Nantucket is is the only town with an elected historic district commission. And across Massachusetts, there are many historic district commissions. Well, they're all appointed, but there are many of them where that right of appointment is spread around. And that's the way they make sure it doesn't become overly political. So for instance, in Beacon Hill, the mayor makes the appointment, but the Spinea, which is now Historic New England, has the right to appoint 2 members, and one has to be chosen. The Realtor Board appoints 2 members and one has to be chosen, and so on. just a little additional information. And, Holly, for what it's worth, I think that it's worth looking again at that Prince George's document, because I think there's some more stuff in there that could be useful and relevant if that is going to be a source document. I'm not saying it needs to be, but it might be good to look at it again.
Point taken.
Thank you.
That's all right. Clement, it's good to see you. For a second, did you just disappear?
She heard you.
No,
call it.
I'm
She heard
here.
you
I'm just
call
on-
it, she forgot.
I'm on PE break. Unfortunately, my subbing job seems to fall on Fridays, but I've got 45 minutes to listen, and I'm glad I hit this category.
Is there anything that you want to add before we move on to the next item on the agenda?
Well, I think the point when I first joined the SAB, I had to make out an application and submit it to the committee. So I don't know if you make an application and give it to the HDC, and then the HDC makes their recommendations, and then the select board approves. I mean, you have to somehow start with a list of available candidates.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that makes
Mhm.
sense. But Holly, you said you'll see if we can update the wording on that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question about timing of, so for the, proposed amendments to section 124? I was looking at this document and I guess imagining that, it would have to be approved at town meeting and potentially, the special town meeting in November, but are you thinking, would this, was that also the timeline you were thinking, or I know that would be,
yeah.
it would need to be sort of,
Yeah.
The
Ready by
earliest would be that
July.
special town meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
but, so, and then my other question would be if, it's not ready in time for that special town meeting, though, then we're looking at annual town meeting 2024. And that's obviously, that would be a long time without having the advisory boards officially reconstituted. So is there any, something in just the very short term that could is there anything that would prevent the select board from reconstituting them without
That's a good
amending
question.
124
That's a good
for the
question.
short term? So that,
The SAC is the only one that had set of parameters and guidelines
Mhm.
already baked into the
Yeah.
law. These advisory boards do not.
right, but
Unfortunately,
could the
there's
select
nothing.
board still say, almost on an ad hoc basis,
I don't know.
okay.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I was in the impression that no. Because there's nothing, there's nothing out there that's in a legal document that talks about the advisory boards. Unfortunately, our predecessors, almost 40 years ago, just, didn't help us with that.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could just direct attention to the town council's recommendation. And so if you look at the opinion that town council wrote, which I don't agree with, what I do agree with in it is that it says the select board could reappoint the advisory boards.
That's what I thought.
He said it a couple times. So there's nothing that is that's standing in the way, and it's been requested. So hopefully they'll do it. I mean, everybody's been asking for it, and
Yeah.
I mean, Holly, am I misunderstanding something in the town? Do you know what I'm referring to? Because
Right.
I don't want to be contradicting, but that is what it says. So if I don't understand, please let me know.
Yeah. But there's still nothing legally in the law that gives any guidelines and parameters, and that was the whole
Oh.
reason why.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is a good point. And so the select board can create advisory boards, so they could appoint these advisory boards. And I think what should have been done before, and I think if there were any problems, this created it, was that there weren't procedures. There weren't bylaws. The HCC there's not a book of bylaws for the HDC, but I think that's part of what's going to be addressed in the scope of work that Holly and the OFC have been working on. And but I don't think I don't think there's any reason not to follow town council's determination that the boards could be reconstituted by the select board while this Article 124 with a nomination mechanism is dealt with.
And again, this is another reason why having this independent review is very imperative, because the last thing we want to do is jump the gun on something. It needs to be it needs to be done thoughtfully. In a way, I kind of feel like I'm the only one who thinks that way, but, you know, anyway, I'm not trying to be, what's the word, dismissive on any of it. It needs to be done thoughtfully, thoroughly, legally done.
I think that's everybody's goal, but meanwhile, we don't want to have 18 months pass by in the process of getting there.
Right.
So if
I understand.
if council has said that it's something that the select board can do, and the select board, is willing to do it
Let's do it.
and sees the importance of it, hopefully they will.
Right.
All right, if there's nothing more, so I haven't heard anything from David so far. Are you still with us?
Yeah, guys, I am here.
Oh,
He's
fine.
furiously taking notes.
Thank you for taking notes, David. Is there anything that you want to add before we move on?
No, I think it's a good discussion. I agree that a sense of urgency is important here. So however we can help move this along is, I think, where I fall on this spectrum.
Thanks, David. All right, so road sidewalk projects. I wrote a letter to the department, what is it, the?
DPW?
No,
Mass dot cultural resources unit.
yes, that's it. Regarding that application or the project that is proposed for Pulpus and Milestone. But there's another thing that's in the works with Pleasant Street and work that's with the plan is being considered. Is there anything that you can offer for insight on that, Holly?
Nope. As you all are aware, Mike Burns is back and I've said all of, hi, welcome back. So I haven't had a chance to sit down with him. I know he's got a full plate just as I do. So I got nothing to provide. But I do know that or his predecessor left with a full plate of stuff on the table to Mike to work on. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
There were a lot of things going on. I just want to make sure that we're sort of riding along with whatever is getting planned.
Yep.
So anything that you learn about or know about, please share with us.
Yeah, and I would like to continue to bring up the far end. That would be, I guess, let's get this organized. Maybe the west end of Center Street, where there's been a lot of paving over the old sidewalk with just asphalt as they're redoing that end of the road. And I don't know who's looking at it or who will be looking at it. I'm sure that
that's-
gets restored.
That's temporary. I spoke to David, the sewer director, and he said that's just temporary to smooth it over, and then they're gonna brick it later on.
Okay, who's gonna brick it?
Well, I believe all that work
Ours
associated with
people,
this.
the RV hour.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think, yeah.
All right, just didn't want it to fall under somebody's radar and,
That's
No, I
gonna be
mean,
the
it-
case all over
yes.
town, whatever they've done, Center Street and all of it.
good.
Okay.
Other staff updates, announcements.
I haven't, no.
Is
Sorry.
there, what's between us and getting a letter written to the Coast Guard? Is that's something that we've been bringing up for
Yeah,
a number
fine.
of months? Is that,
It's a low on my priority, quite frankly. The survey work and HTC are my two, that keeps me busy. So unfortunately, it's there. It's just, there's only so many hours in a day. So it's, yeah, I don't have enough.
does it make more sense for us to write one and then have you sign on to it, or what, how can we move this along?
But I'd rather, I mean. I don't know.
It's always easier to revise something than to start it from scratch, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just, quite frankly, the lighthouses are not a priority at the moment. Understanding, I've made the comments about, Brant Point and its condition. And I was hoping that's what that meeting was gonna be about, but it was not. So,
It's just one of those things that is, I mean, it is a historic resource and it's something that we pass by every time we're on the ferry. And I'm sure we're not the only ones noticing.
nope, next door. That's okay. All
Um,
the time.
noticing that the dire need for there to be some sort of improvements going on. So it'd be nice to have something of record from the town.
I can give you an update about Great Point
Thank you, Hillary. Please go
if
ahead.
you'd like to. So I think everybody knows I serve on the property committee for the trustees. And the trustees property ends short of Great Point Light. Great Point Light sits on Fish and Wildlife property. And the lighthouse, of course, is owned by the Coast Guard. And as you all recall, we tried to explore whether or not we could nominate it because we're a certified local government, if we could exercise our right to nominate it as a historic structure, but we found out that we couldn't because we can't nominate federal structures. But the trustees have had some meetings internally, and they've decided that it's a priority to try to advocate for repair to this lighthouse. And they are in the process of reaching out to the Coast Guard to have a preliminary discussion with them to see the Coast Guard's plan for that lighthouse. And then they will revisit engaging with Senator Keating's office to try to attract Coast Guard attention, Homeland Security attention, and money to repair that lighthouse. And it might also involve some fundraising to create a scope of work so that they can be specific about the cost of the repair. They did have some additional discussion with the guy from International Chimney that Clement and Betsy so kindly connected them with when he was out here to look at Sankaty. And he said, I know I said before that water was coming down behind the masonry from the top of the lighthouse where the cap, the lens and everything is, but he actually thinks it's a repointing issue and a paint issue. So that could be good news, but that's the process. And it may at some point become valuable to have folks, other constituents calling Senator Keating. He really cares about Great Point. He spent a lot of time out there last summer with the trustees, and he always likes to hear from constituents. So I certainly wouldn't discourage anyone who cared about Great Point Light or Brant Point Light to write, as an individual voter and constituent for repair to these lighthouses. But that's the briefing on the organized activity from the viewpoint of the trustees.
Thank you for the update, Hillary. And
Sure thing.
I'm not sure that we ever heard back from the people who were working on Sankaty, what their opinion was. So thanks for the update. Next thing is our joint meeting. Any further communication with HTC about our CLG meeting?
No, it's on my to-do list to facilitate that request to you and the chair of the HTC. I have briefly mentioned it to the vice chair of the HTC that we need to narrow down a date. Thinking May would be the best time before this busy summer, but it needs to be done before June.
I think we're probably going to be somewhat flexible on when we're going to meet, but obviously the sooner we know what that date is, the better we can plan to be able to show up and be there for it.
On that note, as far as meetings go, I think it's also prudent for us to realize that this might be our last Zoom meeting, because I guess it's the House approved the extension, but the Senate has not, and then therefore the governor has not signed it. So as of right now, we, the town, are preparing meetings to be in person. So just to notate that for these meetings. So we'll be able to have the Zoom for recording purposes only, but not for zooming in. So until we hear otherwise.
Thank you for that. All right, so the annual town meeting 2023 articles of historic preservation interest.
Angus, I'd love to present one of the articles.
Hillary, if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, everyone, thank you for hearing from me on this article. I'd like to talk about one article of town meeting interest, which is Article 62. This is an article proposed by Emily Molden, and she's on a plane to Australia. She's probably in Australia now. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit about it because it's an article that I signed and I support it. And I think it's definitely of historic preservation concern. I should mention that this article did receive, I would say, a warm reception from planning, but a motion not to adopt. And I can explain that a little bit. But I just want to raise awareness for this article because I think it's really important. What this article does is it's relevant to a type of division of land. And it makes a change to language in Chapter 139 of the Code of the Town of Nantucket bylaw. Can you actually close that, Angus? Because it's just easier for me to just explain it and to be able to see you all.
Yeah, got it.
If you don't mind. So it's a little technical, but Emily and I believe, and the petitioners believe, that this article leads to the destruction of historic structures. So, and is also an anomaly in the town. So in 2012, language was inserted into the definition section of the Article 139 that automatically bestowed pre-existing non-conforming status on all lots created under this particular statutory chapter of Massachusetts general law, which is chapter 41, which is the subdivision control law, section 81L, which is pertinent to pre-existing to pre-existing structures that pre-existed the local subdivision control law. So let me just explain a little bit as best I can, and others who know a lot about this can chime in as well. But we have a subdivision control law in Nantucket. It was adopted in 1955, and it dictates how what is required to apply for a subdivision. So you have a right to divide your land if you have a certain amount of area and if you have a certain amount of frontage. And then you can divide your land and it's a subdivision, and you can create multiple lots, and you apply for the planning board and they endorse it as a legal subdivision. You're also able to divide your land by statutory right in Massachusetts if you can show that you had multiple structures on your land that pre-existed when the subdivision control law went into place. There are other reasons why you can divide your land as well, and it's not considered a subdivision. So in those cases, you're allowed to divide your land, approval not required, ANR. And what you do is get your paperwork together, you go to the planning board, the planning staff reviews your approval not required application, lets the planning board know that you've met the criteria for approval not required, and the planning board endorses the plan so that the Register of Deeds knows that they can record the plan without having any problems from the planning board. But basically, the ability to divide your land and do what you want as far as conveying, there are many reasons why you might want to divide a lot that is that's not a subdivision. You might want to divide your lot because you want to transfer some portion of the lot to a relative. So you might do it for estate planning purposes. You might have a very large lot, have the right to divide it because you had pre-existing structures that might be, 2 businesses or 2 houses. And you just want to divide it and not have to go through the subdivision process. And then you can have 2 lots and you can sell one and have 2 families living there, et cetera, et cetera. So this Article 62 does not make any changes at all to the statutory right that landowners have to divide their land under Section 4181L. The change that it makes is it removes the additional rights that were conveyed on Nantucket exclusively, that all lots created under 8141L are buildable lots. And what started happening, this went into place in 2012. It wasn't remarked upon a town meeting, it wasn't called, it wasn't discussed, and no reason was given in any minutes that could be found. But it was done in 2012. And then on Nantucket, we started seeing more and more of these divisions. So there are lots of outbuildings on Nantucket. And even though it could be debated in court whether or not, so the law is silent on how substantial the structure needs to be. There's a concept that a structure should be substantial. There have been lots that had, I think there was one with a turkey slaughter, like a chicken slaughterhouse, but it had plumbing and it had its own septic system. So this has not been completely tested in the courts. But on Nantucket, what's happening is that if there's a shed or a garage on a lot, it has been divided, and we don't see a ton of them, but we're seeing more and more. I think there's like a handful, like one, Emily did all the numbers, but in 2012, there was 1, in 2013, there were 2, there were 3, and then there were like 8. And we're seeing situations where, for instance, I'll give you one example, which is 126 Main Street, where a lot is being divided because of a garage, and then a rear lot that doesn't have adequate access, in this case, it has 11 feet, is being created, and then an application goes in to knock down the structure. So what Emily found out when she started consulting and doing research was that there's documents that have been created by the I guess the land court, it would be, about how to interpret the subdivision control law. There was never, so the whole idea of zoning is that over time lots should be becoming more regular. We have our zoning because we want our zoning to hold. And if there is an irregular or undersized lot, if there's an opportunity to make it more regular, to make it more conforming, the zoning law is supposed to be encouraging that. And there is never, just because a lot can be divided, that is not anywhere in the statute or anywhere in any other towns in Massachusetts automatically conveying that lot should be buildable. So that's a special addition that Nantucket has given. And as a result, we're seeing more irregular lots. We're seeing destruction of historic outbuildings. And we're seeing a hole blown through our zoning code with small lots being divided, under additional ownership that aren't maybe necessarily safe because of the lack of access for emergency vehicles, et cetera. And there's really nothing that anybody can do about it. There's no way to appeal it. There's no notice given to the abutters to be able to show up. It's just suddenly they're at the HDC because that's the only notice they've given. So just to wrap up, I want to emphasize that the reason why I support this bylaw is because I think Nantucket should not be out of conformance with the rest of the Commonwealth in terms of conveying this right that really is harmful to neighborhoods. And I also think that it preserves the ability for people to divide their land as is their statutory right. And what would happen is if their land was large enough that they had a legal lot, that lot would have all the rights that it would have under zoning as a separate lot. If they have a lot that maybe isn't quite large enough, but it makes a lot of sense for it to be developed, or the structure is really, substantial, they have the ability to go to the ZBA just like everybody else and make the argument of why their project makes sense and is not harmful or detrimental to the neighborhood. And then they can get pre-existing non-conforming status given to them. But by taking this language out of the bylaw, we roll back this something that has really been harmful. So I think it would be good for historic structures to pass this. And I'm happy to answer questions as best as I can.
Thank you, Hillary. That was educational. There was a lot in there. Does anyone on the commission have any questions about?
Yeah, oh, well, I was at the planning meeting when this came up, and I just wanted to add the context that the planning commission just wanted to work with Emily to make it a little more specific. They thought the idea was not bad. They just wanted to add more specific. So I think the goal was to work with her to round out the article and then have it actually, that's why they decided not to endorse, and then have her bring it to the town meeting in November. That was my understanding. So I think it's not that they didn't like the idea. I think there were some things they wanted to add, some specificity, and then hopefully it would come in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Just mentioning the historic structures and subdividing. I've just in the process of reviewing applications for Wisconsin Advisory and historic structures in town. I've come across this sort of thing more than I have in the past. So it is an issue, and it is a threat to historic structures. At least in the applications I've seen so far, it has been detrimental to not just the structures, but the the neighborhood at large as far as character and sense of place. So it is a concern.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Probably for Hillary. If they're not given the right, if they're allowed to through 81L to subdivide the property, but they don't have the right to build a new home so they're allowed to subdivide but maintain the existing use of the existing building. That's all they can do.
Yes, so they would have whatever rights they have under zoning for the new lot. They wouldn't because they decided to create a non-conforming lot. So the lot was conforming, right? Their lot was conforming. They decided to divide it as is their right. But what they created was a non-conforming lot. And so it persists as a non-conforming lot and they have whatever rights they had. So having a non-conforming lot, it doesn't mean that you have to tear down the buildings on the lot. So they just, if they want to make changes, they would need to go to the ZBA and say, I have this non-conforming lot. I'd like to have pre-existing non-conforming designation, which allows them to exercise their certain rights. They have to extend the non-conformity. So it would prevent anyone, it would stop the automatic granting of pre-existing non-conforming status. That status would need to be requested, which would give a review. It would give an opportunity for a board to say, you know what, this makes sense. There's already a cottage on it. It's already being used as a separate family. There's lots of space. There's adequate access, even though it's a little shy or whatever the situation is. Does that answer your question?
Well, pre-existing non-conforming is a phrase we're just so familiar with in the zoning code. We hear it all the time. We don't often hear of the word non-conforming lots. I don't even know if there are many non-conforming lots on the island. So it sounds like they're going to be sort of stagnant. There's really not much you can do with a non-conforming lot in terms of building permits.
You'd have to go and ask to make it pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
And that is exactly why, Mickey, these 4181L A&R divisions, which we are seeing, there's a certain agent who has, probably wrote this in the first place. That's a supposition on my part, but she does a lot of these. And they don't happen in any other towns in Massachusetts. It's just not a thing. I mean, I took a training course on pre-existing Section 6 rights, and you don't hear anybody talking. I mean, they were like, what are you talking about? That is, these 4181L divisions are not a thing, but they're a really big thing on Nantucket because they're buildable.
So
Well,
what this proposed. Sorry, go
They would
ahead, Nikki.
they would still be buildable. You just have to go to the ZBA to make sure that it's okay. And, you know, I think people get concerned, oh, well, then you'll have like too much work for the ZBA. Well, I mean, I think they're like 5 of these on average. It's not a huge amount of work. And I think it'll be pretty obvious when something should be pre-existing non-conforming, because for instance, it will already have a cottage on it and it will have plenty of access. But it's an opportunity for the neighbors to be notified, and I think it's good for neighborhoods.
So the proposed article is kind of not closing a loophole, but just creating more checks and balances so that there is more protection for otherwise undividable lots.
Yeah.
Is-
I think it's important to know that it doesn't remove any rights that you're given under the state statute. That is for sure. And it replaces what I'll call a loophole with a process that includes a
But-
review.
But planning just wants to make it a little more specific, so they would prefer she bring it back in November. So they could
Yes.
add to it. That's the only thing.
Abby is absolutely right about that. And I just wanted to convey that Emily has decided that she does want to ask. She will call the article. At this point, I guess she
Yeah, I
could
mean,
change
she
her
can
mind.
obviously do
Anyone
that, but
can
I just
call
so
it.
people understand that.
Yeah.
No, they're not opposed to it. They just wanted to put more specificity in.
Right. And
Right.
they weren't specific. They said, well, we need more time, etc. I think, I mean, everyone will make up their own mind and this commission will make up its own mind, but I think we lose historic structures and we create complete nightmares for neighbors because of these 4181L divisions. And every month that people are running around saying, how can I divide my land? And realtors are advertising it, 4181L division. And suddenly this like sweet little tool shed is being substantiated as a pre-1955 structure and then applied for it to be torn down. So, nobody loses any statutory rights, and any lots that make sense to be developed, we'll get that from the ZBA if they can show that. So I don't know what the planning board is planning, but I think it's just foot dragging, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's clearly your personal opinion. I don't think that's actually what the planning board's trying to do. I think they wanted to speak with her and be more specific. I don't think they were aiming to drag their feet. That was,
I would agree with you on that.
that was my impression of being there and discussing with the other members. I did want to make sure, can we talk about the goals? I just wanted to make sure we got that.
Definitely. Is there any more discussion about this article? Would anyone like to make a motion or move further with it?
David has his hand raised.
Oh, David, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not sure how appropriate it is for me to comment in depth on this, just given what I do professionally. But Hillary has a great presentation. I guess I would say I'm surprised that this loophole has been around for as long as it has been. And I do think that it endangers structures without tightening up the bylaw. So I don't know if it's something I need to recuse myself from, but generally am in favor of supporting this article.
It sounds like something that you might know more about than the rest of us, just because of your work. But I think it would probably be helpful to the article to have our support if the commission wants to do that. It's to put our support behind it.
I would like to propose that we support it, that we move to support it. I think it is important and relevant to the preservation of the sense of Nantucket as it is, that we not have new buildings popping up all over wherever. And I think 6 months is an important period of time. So a lot can happen in 6 months. And delaying this for 6 months doesn't seem necessary to me. I know there may be disagreement, but that's the way I feel about it.
That's fine.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Mickey? Thank you. Any discussion? Or we'll go the rest of the vote. David,
Aye.
Abby,
Nay.
Georgie, you have the motion. Clement, are you still with us?
I'm still here. I'm just waiting.
Clement.
Clement.
Oh, comment. Sorry. I thought you said Hillary.
Um,
I think she
I-
dropped.
all right, well,
5-1.
I think I'm in favor of supporting this. I don't feel there's a negative, and I think that there's a lot of a positive behind the intention of it. And hopefully the sorting out will happen in a timely way so that we can move forward with it. But
Angus, you should just ask Mickey and Tom to vote as well.
thank you.
I,
Mickey, I'm sorry, with you being the second, I thought you already did. Tom,
Yeah, I do too.
I,
thank you. Okay, so, I'll write a letter of support from the commission. Is
Thanks.
there-
I'm sure Emily will really appreciate it. Thank you for the discussion and
Well,
consideration.
thank you for presenting that. It makes a difference. So let's move on to refining our goals. There's a slide that I believe Abby prepared.
Mhm.
Um,
I just tried to put everything that we had discussed in our previous meetings into a slide. So the first one, we expected response, we got the response. So I think for this one now, what I'll do is move it to like the next phase. But basically, the key thing was we had applied for the grant, got the grant, great news. I think the priority for this is obviously high. I think as we talked about, our highest priority is the grant program. We had talked about working, creating our sub-grant fund. What we had talked about was going to the CPC first. That's medium. I think the key date is 9/9. I want to say that's when we'd have to present at the CPC. So that's that date. And the other one we had talked about was the beach concession stands. That's also the same date. And I also put that as medium. The governance, we put high, which is that we wanted to set up our meeting prior to June 2023 with the CLG. Tax credits, I put that as medium, that's ongoing. The education, we had talked about doing like a summary of building with Nantucket in mind, creating a short video. I had that as medium. I just put as a date June, but we hadn't started it yet, but that's something that I think we wanted to reach out. I think this one's a little more flexible, so we can move it around. The education, we wanted to do training for the commissioners, they appoint the training captain. We had talked about, I'm happy to do that because I had recently attended the MHC session, so I could give kind of like an overview. I have that as ongoing. Community education, we had talked about partnering with Egan Maritime about educating the public on the shipwreck. And I think the thought was that sometime this summer. And then a workshop, we had talked about doing a NARAB workshop. I don't think we've done anything, but that one, again, I just put a date of June, but we can move it around. And the last thing was kind of ongoing, which is engaging with our peers. So.
I think this is helpful to see all of this, and I encourage all the commissioners to, to take a look at this and see where.
I can email everyone.
could you do
Where-
that?
A copy, yeah, let me email everybody a copy.
Where you can contribute. If you've got an idea about what the next NARAB
Workshop.
workshop could be about. or, any of the different, pieces, are welcome and we can incorporate them into the next meeting and following meeting.
Sure.
I have ideas about the work on the building with Nantucket in mind, and maybe that, does it make sense? What do you think, Holly, to be in touch with the OFC? About that?
Yeah, I mean, I
That
think,
subgroup of the HDC that is sort of organizing
yeah, that would
organizing
be
the HDC.
either that or it would be a great topic with the CLG.
Mhm.
That joint collaboration. But yeah, that would probably be the first step is to reach out to OFC to say, hey, this is something that what we're working on that we would like to do. Because I think anything with building Nantucket Mine, they're the holder of it, if you will, but they recognize it, don't have the time to do the educational component that this commission could do. And through the CLG, I think that would be good.
The CLG, I imagine, I'm not sure how many minutes we were able to meet with them, but I would imagine that that's probably a venue to like vote on something that another group has already worked through, because there's so little
Yeah.
time to actually like get down and work on stuff. I can't imagine happening in that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the CLG. Really, I think there's going to be some things where. Looking just. Overall. Where the two commissions lie together. How this commission assists with the HDC. I think that would be, yeah. And building with Nantucket in mind, I do think that OFC would be the one to say, yes. We look to the historical commission to assist us with that.
Okay, any other suggestions while we have this up on the screen? I can't see anybody now because it's consuming the screen, but are there any comments about this list of our goals?
I just think it's great to see it written down and it keeps us on track of the stuff that we have in mind to do. So I appreciated Abby putting that work together. I think it's great.
Done a lot of these. I would say one of the things that I'll add, which I think will be helpful, is once we, like, I can produce this monthly or quarterly, whatever we think works, but we can do previous status and current status. So that way we can also see progress, which I think is nice to see if something
Yeah.
suddenly goes from green to yellow, like we know, or if like a couple of these gray ones become green, I think that'll be good too. So we can see that we're making, progress on them. So I can add that for as we kind of move forward.
I'm
Thank-
hopeful regarding the Egan Maritime with the shipwreck. I'm hopeful I'll hear soon. I know David Robinson, the chief archaeologist from the BUAR, I think it's called. Got that acronym correct. He was working on the report on his findings when he came here in December. And that they were going to be sending a copy of that to both Egan Maritime and myself. And I will note that in lieu or not in lieu, but since we just had our section 106 review #2 with the Mayflower or South Coast as of yesterday, that was a long time process. He was on the call too, which was enlightening because our SHPO was not there. So I thought that was interesting. But my point is, I would hope that we can have some more. I'll be able to provide some more information about that collaboration that the Egan Maritime wants to do, and they're really looking for the town to help support that. And obviously, this commission is the best for that.
Great.
Yeah, I think that would be good kind of press for us.
It'd be really
Definitely.
good.
Cool.
I think that's it.
Last thing, any commissioner comments? Has everyone commented as much as they want?
I have one.
Tom, go ahead.
If anybody's interested and they go down to the South Shore or Nantucket Beach or whatever, Cisco, Surfside, and look to the south and see a 400-foot ship out there. It's the Vineyard Wind ship laying cable for their towers. It was there yesterday.
I'll go out
I'm
and look.
I'm not
Tom.
on Nantucket, I'm in Hyannis, but I have wherewithal to tell you that.
Thank
No,
you, Tom.
I'll-
I saw that on the
I'll go
news
look this
feed this
afternoon.
morning, and to imagine something the length of a football field and longer, 100 foot longer. I'm curious how much you see in elevation and how high that ship is compared to what the windmills are going to be.
Yeah.
Will be
Well,
interesting to.
the Vineyard Wind ones are gonna be 859 feet tall. The Mayflower winds are 1,066
Yeah.
feet tall, or 99 feet.
And are you talking about the tower or the
Yes,
projection?
I'm talking about the tower at
of
the water.
Propeller when it goes up?
Yep.
Which,
I think he said the tower.
The tower,
The
so then
tower.
to your point, the propeller
That
might.
includes the blade at the top.
Oh.
of the
so that's the top of the blade when it's as high as it goes.
Yeah, each wind farm, through technology and as it changed, they have a design envelope that they're requesting to go to, and then with time that elapse, it seems like that technology changes, yes, and it seems to grow from one developer to the next. So it's really hard to sit there and try to, actually understand what they're going to look like.
It's gonna get to be like cable towers. They're gonna be around and we're gonna look at them.
Yeah, but you know what? There's been a lot of whale activity.
Oh, that's
Recently,
interesting.
there
Yeah,
has
they
been a
can prove
lot of
that
it.
it's- I wish they could prove the connection.
Yeah.
How many were there?
In-
in South
Three.
Shore?
And they closed the canal, but I think the thing is, that might be the best way to slow it down, because they don't know what the impact is, and they, and they're protected.
Well, my
So that-
understanding,
Yeah.
ACRAT still has their
Yeah,
lawsuit.
I heard that Akron had a really good lawyer.
Yeah.
Also. They have really good lawyer.
That's good.
Yeah,
There are a few on the other side.
yes,
There
but
sure
they
are,
said that the
yeah.
ACRAT lawyers were much more skilled than the other. They had numbers, but the ACRAT lawyers were actually better, even though they weren't as many. That's what I heard. I can't remember. So, for what it's worth, that's what I heard.
Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank
Second,
you, Tom. Thanks, Georgia. All in favor, Mickey,
Aye.
David,
I think you.
Oh, yeah, he had to leave, but he said he'll be circulating minutes.
Gabby,
Aye,
who else do we have?
Georgia.
Georgia, yes, but you. Second, okay. I gotta get that right. And I as well. So, thank you all for meeting today.
Thank you.
Uh,
See you all later.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
I
Good luck
emailed
with your
everyone.
car, Tom.